Hello and welcome to the Vocal Sound Healing Podcast. My name is Alexandra Rigazzi-Tarling. I'm a vocal sound healing practitioner and trainer and a vocal coach and technician. And I've been working with voice for well over 25 years, and I've been training vocal sound healers for about the last 10 years. And I bring everything voice, vocal sound healing, voice healing to this podcast for discussion. So thank you for joining me today. And this episode is episode 15, and it's entitled Authentic Voice, Realizing Your Acoustic Space. So what do we mean by that? So as you know, these podcasts are generally inspired by my working week, inquiries that I get, conversations that I have with people. And following on from the many colours of the human voice for healing, a technical exploration workshop that I gave with my friend and colleague Sarah Stevenson last Sunday, I still have things I want to share around that concept of authentic voice and authentic sound and the physiology. And we talked a bit about that last time. But it's an ever-growing journey, not just for the people I work with, but for myself as well. I'm always learning, I'm always finding out more and wanting to share those concepts with you as well. So you'll hear in episode 14 that Sarah and I chat about the importance of understanding vocal physiology and applying a technical understanding of voice to healing work. And also, for sound healers or wellness practitioners, people like that in general that are leading classes, sound baths, meditations, that sort of thing. And really because the sound of your voice reflects everything that you are, really on all levels and so many levels, if you haven't ever worked with your vocal sound and it's holding stress and tensions, even traumas that you might have experienced, then the people listening to you that are sensitive will pick up on that. And certainly when we lead anyone into an altered state, whether that's a simple relaxation technique, a meditation, a sound bath, we're asking them to trust us. They're really trusting us to support them and to hold that space for them whilst they journey, whilst they go to that daydream alpha state or deeper, depending on what you're doing. And, when we hold someone in that state, we must hold a safe space for them and a space where their nervous system, even just for a short while, can find that sense of regulation. And of course, that's going to be different for everybody. A highly dysregulated person won't just regulate at the click of your fingers. I'm not implying that. But if they trust you and they trust the space that you're holding, it might be the one place that they can begin to learn what regulation feels like. And then the sound of your voice is going to be one of the first things that they actually entrain to, that they latch onto for that regulation. So can you balance and steady people with the sound of your voice? And it is perfectly possible when we're in a balanced and happy place about vocalizing, when we've explored our own voice and have that regular vocal workout in place. And that, would include both technical and a sort of healing side of voice work. And perhaps that looks like a practice which starts with a bit of a vocal workout to find ease, stamina, fluidity with your vocal muscles, your processes, all of that coordination that is voice, all of those muscles, all of those processes that come together to create your sound. And then you might finish that practice with some meditative vocal toning, some humming, where you meet your inner self with your voice. So it's very much that physiology, but then going within, sensing into the voice as a vibration, as a way to navigate your energetic self, or your subtle energetic self. And both sides of this, the technical and the physiological and the healing sounds and meditative practice, it's both needed to come to that place of balance within ourselves, to come to that place of acceptance within ourselves about our sound and our voice, where there's time for reflection, for going deeper. So we have that, more superficial physical aspect, the physiological part of voice, the functioning, how it works, the optimum physiology and so on. But that we also go within, because the voice can take us so deeply into that place of silence, regulation, or resistance to those things. So we really find out a lot about ourselves through our voice. And that can be quite a journey in itself. But the difference between somebody that has embarked on that journey and works with their voice daily versus someone who doesn't is extremely obvious. And I know the person that I would prefer to hold space for me. We can be so sensitive to somebody's voice, and especially if, for someone like myself who works with voice all day, every day, so many different voices, you begin, if you're sensitive in that way, you begin to read the person just by the sound of their voice. And so in a situation where someone is holding space for me, I need to know that I can entrain to, that really positive aspect of their sound. So let's just backtrack for a minute, because I did an earlier podcast about awakening your authentic voice through vocal toning. And I'd just like to recap what I'm referring to when we talk about authentic voicing. So firstly, it's not a performative thing. So the authentic voice is the sound that you began to develop as a baby when you first learned to sound. It was the sound before you learned to speak, before language started to develop, so before you were conforming to language, to accent, to what you should say, and absolutely before any sort of music or genre. So it was the pure resonance of you, in essence. So I hear you ask, how can I return to that baby voice now that I've learned everything else? And here we have it. So many of the exercises I might use for vocal exploration with my clients may seem quite childlike. And why do we do those exercises? So firstly, we want to use the vocal mechanism in a way that you would have done before you first started learning to sound and speak and so on. So if we take an exercise like the raspberry, for example, so the raspberry is, and if you've ever worked with me, you will know that exercise. And, the raspberry is one of the first sounds you would have made as a baby. So it's a sort of spit bubble you would have found. You would have put your tongue forward and a little sound would have come. And you would have explored as a baby how your tongue could come forward in your mouth, how to blow over it, how to make some sound with the tongue in the way. And this would have helped you build sensory information about your tongue, about your breath, about breath pressure, about your soft palate lifting, and ultimately the sound that came as a result of that. I mean, so many things you would have received sensory information about, that's just a few. And you would have learned about the sound that came forth because of that position that you made. So now, when I ask someone to work with the raspberry sound, at first they think I'm mad. And if they're new to this, they can have all sorts of resistance around it. But two things happen. Firstly, they begin to explore this fundamental sound in vocalization, which they would never usually make. That's key. They would not usually make this sound. So as a result of that, they begin to use muscles of vocalization they haven't used in years. muscles that may just be dormant, switched off. But secondly, the resistance they might feel also shows us where there might be energetic blocks due to conditioning around things like how they want to be seen, how they feel others see them, vulnerability around making sound and feeling silly, perhaps, feeling humiliated even. So how they feel about making that sound gives us another lot of information, which could potentially help us when we're really unraveling this authenticity around being, around vocalizing and so on. So when we work with these highly technical but simplistic sounds like the raspberry, we've worked with the tongue in the forward position, we've created space in the jaw, both of which massively inform the space that we need for the voice to resonate effectively. We've worked the breath and breath resistance, and then we've held a mirror up to ourselves showing how we feel about making this seemingly ridiculous yet important sound. So our authentic voice is about revealing what's there under layers of conditioning, emotion, habits, and usually a lack of understanding about how the voice actually functions, and the muscles that need unwinding, and the muscles and processes that need engaging. But unless we work with the voice daily, or at least a couple of times a week, I'm going to say at least a few times a week actually, we are a slave to speech, accent, and the vocal shutdown that this causes. Because when we speak, we're not even using a quarter of the space and the muscles and all of the things that are going on that we would use if we were really sounding. So, as children, we scream, we call out, we shout, we giggle, we coo, we cry, we laugh, all of it. And then gradually that gets shut down. And we begin to conform and behave and so on. And of course, to a certain extent, we need to learn to behave. But we mustn't forget the other side of it, the play and the sounding. So all those natural sounds create a physical response in the body. Or even, I should say, that the physical and energetic response in the body is what causes those natural vocalizations, the expression of those vocalizations. But when it's deemed impolite or inappropriate to allow those natural vocalizations, for whatever reason, it might be out of fear, it could be anything, then not only does the voice shut down, but the response is shut down too. So, it's sort of chicken and egg thing. And just as sort of random example, I tend to use this quite a lot because certainly I've experienced, I think we can all relate to this, that example of an adult walking down the street and they trip over a paving stone and they land smack down on the concrete, ouch. Hopefully someone rushes over to check you're okay. If you fall down the middle of the high street, for example, sometimes people come over, don't they? They still do, thankfully, to check you're okay. And you find yourself hurrying to your feet and saying, yes, I'm fine, thanks so much, I'm fine, all good, thank you, yes, I'm fine. And you walk away as quickly as you can with that god-awful pain somewhere where you've hurt yourself, your heart's racing, you're probably close to tears. And what's going on? We've shut down all of those processes, all of those responses, both emotional and physical, because we were thinking it wasn't appropriate to have a reaction there in front of everybody. But if you were a toddler, what would you do? If you were a toddler, most likely you'd fall over, you'd hit the ground, there'd be a sort of split second of silence, and then you'd let out a huge cry. You'd let the pain discharge through this response for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then you'd go about your daily life like nothing happened. For the toddler, the mouth would open long, the soft palate would lift as they cry, the tongue would come forward, the larynx would shift and move, the diaphragm would have an almighty spring-like response to trigger that emotion, that release. The vagus nerve would be stimulated. The cry and then subsequent sobs would help the pain to leave the body through that sound and through further nervous system stimulation. Tears would come that would be filled with your body's soothing hormones, and then everything could begin to settle. The response was complete, and the voice and the vocal mechanism played a huge part in the alarm of the accident and then the subsequent calming. And that is what is meant to happen. The body is meant to be able to go through all of those processes. The voice is meant to cry and scream and allow that if something's happened. So the body and the physiology relies on natural vocalization for healthy movement of the diaphragm, for stimulation of the vagus nerve, for pain release and relief, for feel-good endorphins and other nervous system balancing hormones to be released so that we can feel well, happy, full of energy, full of life, or at least return to a positive place after an accident or a trauma or a stress or so on. And there's nothing more authentic than the resonance of a cry. Even if it's pain, it might not be pleasant, but there's nothing more authentic than that cry if you've hurt yourself. Or even a guttural laugh, something that's really engaged your body. And so looking at this authentic voice concept for a moment from a vocal sound healing perspective and that of acoustics. So we know that all sounds resonate the way they do because of these mysterious, elusive things called harmonics. And harmonics are the sounds that we're not usually aware of. So in the most simplest of explanations, how do we tell sounds apart? We tell sounds apart because of the harmonics that resonate above the fundamental tone. So, how do we tell the difference between the human voice and a violin, for example? Because they resonate different harmonics. If you were to strip away all of the harmonic resonances of each using a computer program, you'd end up with two tones that sound identical. So it's the structure of the thing that's making the sound that gives it its sound, in effect. We're not talking about overtones here, just for a moment. We'll just put that aside for a moment. Overtones are when you can hear flute-like whistle sounds that are sounding the harmonic series above the fundamental tone. That you can hear these whistly, fluty sounds above the actual note being sounded. So we're not talking about that for the moment. We're just talking about the plain nature of sound and the colour and the timbre. These are the harmonics that define that sound. So applying this to the structure of the human body. If we are working with our voice, but the jaw is clamped down, back teeth are together, the tongue is retracted. We don't have nice, clean and clear vocal fold closure, for example. This is going to massively affect the resonance that can be achieved, not only for the vocal instrument itself, but with the very important resonance space where the raw vibration of the vocal folds resounds. So that resonant space is literally the back of your mouth, your pharynx. The vocal folds resonate in the larynx with a sort of sound that doesn't sound like your voice at that point, it's just vibration. And then it comes up into your mechanism. And because of the shape of your mechanism, your pharynx, your nose, your skull, all of it, because of you and how you're shaped, the voice sounds the way it does. So if the mouth and the pharynx are not placed to optimally resonate your voice, then you're only going to get half the story. Half the story of your vocal sound. Half the potential of your vocal sound. Half the everything of your vocal sound. It's like a big chunk's missing. Now, if you don't hear, you might not know what it is. You might not know what that sounds like. That full, authentic, harmonious, harmonic-filled sound. You might not know that yet. But if you're not hearing that full spectrum of sound and resonant harmonics, even if you don't know what it sounds like, but if you're not hearing those harmonics that are innate to your physical setup when you vocalize, you're always going to feel like something's wrong, like it's not really you, like it's not your voice. And because you're not hearing what you think you should hear, and there are other things related to this, like, for example, because as we're too close to where the sound's being produced. So what we hear is not what people hear outside of us. So there is that as well. But when you are hearing that full resonant sound, it's quite different. But if it's not there and you're thinking, it's not me, it's not my voice, it just feels wrong, this feeling of like, it doesn't feel right, this frustration almost, because you know on some level it's not right, it's not you. This may cause you to get into bad habits. So you might push on your sound because you're trying to make it more resonant, trying to make it richer, you're trying to make it sound nicer, whatever that means. What does it mean when we're talking about sound? It's subjective anyway. But if you're thinking, oh God, just not comfortable with it, you try and push on it and do all these other things, and that won't work either, because that will just cause you strain. It'll cause you to constrict. If you're forcing air and pushing your voice, it'll cause the voice to distort. And ironically as well, it will cause you to have less space for the harmonics anyway, so it won't work. So our voices are completely unique because of that space where the sound initially resonates, as I've just said, your pharynx, your mouth, your nose, your skull, and everything surrounding you. Your whole body is a resonator. And it's not the same as anybody else. And it is this space that is you that allows your sound to sound the way it does. But very often we're blocking that space, not even realising it, blocking it, like I said. If you're, experiencing stress and tension, you might be shutting down the teeth, retracting the tongue, blocking that space. There's all other things that you might be doing as well, but they are very common ones. So if we bring this all back to the authentic voice perspective, if your resonant space has an optimum setup, you understand it, you work with it, you're used to it, it feels good, then you're going to be producing a sound that is optimum for your setup. The sound will resonate the space. It will contain all of those harmonics we talked about, all the harmonics available. And you can play with that as well. You can play with those colours and those timbres and those harmonics. But as a result of all those harmonics being available and that sound resonating within you and feeling good and feeling comfortable because you've done the work, because you've worked with your voice, you've understood it, you've taken it deeper, you've gone into places where you thought, but you've gone there anyway. That sound will resonate the space, contain all those harmonics available, and as a result of your body, of your physiology, of you. So this harmonic filled, comfortable sound is because of you. This authentic sound, it's purely you. No one else has it. This is the raw timbre and colour and expression of you. And once you find that sound, you can really use your voice to read how you feel. Because if something's not quite right, something's not quite resonating today. It becomes a baseline for you understanding yourself. Talked about podcasts before about, your baseline feeling of you, resensitizing. What do you feel like? And it's the same with the voice. What is the baseline of the voice without imitating others, without, trying to sound a certain way? What is this raw, pure timbre, an expression of you? Because if we can all bring that to the table, wow, the world would be resonating. Sounds would be resonating like, it'd be amazing. So let's just think into this. So let's say you've got some emotional stuff going on with your energy. Perhaps your nervous system's a bit dysregulated. It's causing you to live in a state of tension. And that tension's sitting in the constrictor muscles in your throat. It's causing you, as I said, to clench your teeth. And as a result of that, your soft palate, that squidgy skin right at the back of your pharynx is sitting low. Because, you're feeling got stuff going on. It's all shutting down. This is going to massively affect your vocal sound. Because the space that the voice needs to resonate isn't going to be there. And the voice won't resound in that space. The harmonics that could be produced to allow your voice to feel free and wholesome and rich won't be available. Now imagine you've lived your whole life like this, with these tensions. And for you, this is just your normal vocal sound. But on some level, it doesn't always work. You can't rely on it. You can't always make yourself heard. You're trying to get your point across. No one seems to be listening. You try to lead your yoga, your meditation class, your vocal sound healing. But with nerves, the voice and the space and the tension is just getting worse. And and you're trying to offer your meditation, but people are fidgeting and they don't seem to be relaxing when they hear your voice. And it goes on. And worst of all, you don't feel connected to your voice, to your sound, because it's not the true sound your body longs to hear. It's not resonating the way it could. It's not your pure, authentic sound, and that's it. Your body knows. But you think, because you're not a professional singer, it wouldn't warrant you training your voice. Why would you? My question is, what's professional singing got to do with it? Because I'm talking about your authentic sound. The sound that you live with and work with. The thing that is absolutely the essence of you, at the base of everything else. Now, if you want to take that authentic sound to singing, to professional speaking or whatever it is, and learn, the rules of the specific genre, like maybe opera or contemporary or, whatever it is, that's another thing. You take your voice to that and you work from your place of authentic sound, and you put the genre conditioning on top of that. We can still hear the authentic sound. So don't get confused with genre, because genre is what goes on top of the authentic sound. It's sort of like a filter, you know? It's like taking a picture with a camera. You've got different filters for different effects. Once you've found your authentic sound, you can sing anything. It's always you. That's when you hear really, really good singers out there, performers, and they can work across the board, and it's always them. And they just look like they're flying, don't they? Because they've found it. But I do work with professional voice users that have spent, their lives, I'm going to say restricted by genre conditioning, because they've never felt happy, they've never felt regulated, they've never felt safe using their voice. Because underneath it all, they've forgotten what their natural and authentic resonance is. And, maybe they never knew it anyway, or never had time to play with it and work with it before they got programmed in at an early age to sound like the next pop singer or Western singer or whatever it might be. They might not have ever had time. I've had, children, or shall I say parents, come to me over the years, when kids are like 8 years old and they've been programmed to sound a certain way. And I knew very quickly that wasn't the type of work I wanted to be doing, because I wasn't working with the child, I was working with the demands of the parents. And of course, I'm sure they wanted the best for their children. But there was already a lot of unhappiness. So if you've never had chance to work with that authentic sound, or you worked with it briefly as a child and then went into genre training, whatever it was, there might be a sense of forgetting who you are. So once we reconnect to that natural resonance and we work with that through simple healing sounds like humming, vocal toning and so on, once we've got that authentic sound, we can really do anything we want. Because on some level, the body knows this sound. It knows these harmonics. It just clicks into place. It knows it. So when you start producing the resonance of you, because that space is optimally functioning, that resonance space that is your mouth, your pharynx, your body and so on, your body, your energy literally rejoices. It feels comfortable. Something clicks within you. Everything feels okay. This has a deeper effect on your nervous system, so on the sound. The sound you produce becomes highly regulating for you. But also, not just for you, for the people that are receiving that sound too. So speaking, sounding, singing, whatever. Other people feel that incredible joy. That flow within them. Over 40 years ago, Fabien Maman, who is a French acupuncturist, musician, sound healer, he did some research on human blood cells. And he, as well as researching dissonant sounds on cells and seeing unhealthy cells break down with dissonant sounds, he also photographed cells with Kirlian photography. So Kirlian photography, it's in its very early days. The Kirlian photography is now sort of 3D imaging, aura imaging equipment. It basically photographs the electromagnetic fields around things. And what he saw was that certain sounds made human blood cells emit varying degrees of light, coloured light. But when somebody used their own voice to sing to their own blood cells, that photonic light effect was so much greater. And the cells gave off more light, were completely radiant, all of these colours, and seemed, very happy. Beautiful. Now, those of you that are used to perhaps listening to the podcast or working with me, of late I have been referencing Dr. Catherine Clinton's book Optimize a lot. But over 40 years on from Fabian's research, now further research about the electrical and sonic nature of our bodies, Fabian's work back then makes a lot of sense. It was incredible anyway for its time. It was, so far ahead of its time. But now with all of the quantum biological research, it makes perfect sense that our own sound is the most healing for us. So if we can understand our voice from a physiological perspective and create the optimum resonance space for our sound, and learn to use our voice in ways to express different colours, timbres, then we're working with all of the beautiful harmonics available to us and our authentic voice. That's what it is. It is authentic because no one else is shaped like you. So, why we keep trying to imitate instead of explore our own instrument? There's so many reasons for that. But we've got to start moving away from that. Genre is one thing, but at the base of it, we have to know our own sound and vibration. We have to understand how that sound is formed, because it's our unique aural and bodily acoustic resonance space that produces these harmonics or not. And I think just one last thing. In sound healing, we understand that it is the ordered harmonics in sound that create healing conditions for those receiving the sound and for ourselves, of course. And the measurements of the harmonics, especially those in the harmonic series, these measurements, these ratios of the harmonics, we go all the way back to Pythagoras here, and him and his monochord and working out all these harmonics and the measurements and so on. But all of the measurements of these harmonics can be found throughout nature in varying degrees. So in the constellations, in chemistry, biology, physics, measurements of the human body, the study of spectroanalysis, so the study of the rainbow, the study of cymatics, so vibrational matter, and the list goes on. The same measurements of these harmonics crop up throughout the cosmos. So when we're working with optimum acoustic spaces, whether that's, our mouth and our body and the physiology that affects that, or, if you're sounding in a space as well, when we can tap into the pure resonance, the harmonics become more defined. The resonance becomes more defined, it becomes stronger, it becomes more aligned to the natural measurements of nature, of the cosmos. And the reason it's healing is because we are entraining back to this natural order instead of being pulled off in every direction by the way we live our lives, by our emotions, by what we feel, by our conditioning, by what's done to us and so on. We entrain back to the natural order. That feeling of being out walking in nature and you just think, oh, this is so beautiful, walking on the beach, sitting under a lovely big tree and just feeling that sense of, this is healing. This alignment with nature, with the order of natural things. This is the definition of healing, a reordering, a restructuring of ourselves to the natural and the creative way of the universe, if we will allow it. And when we work in that way, and especially with voice, because the voice is aligning everything that we are, it's affecting all of our cells, 98% water molecules, it's affecting everything that we are. So when we're working with that authentic sound and resonating our bodies in that way, in that pure alignment, it allows us to connect and entrain to the natural order. It allows us to receive that deep, transformative healing. But it also allows everyone around us to be affected by that as well. So when you're giving, your yoga class, or leading your meditation, or offering your sound bath and your vocal sound, people know. They know that resonance. They know that order. They don't know why they know. They just know they know. Click. That feels good. That makes me feel more peaceful. That makes me feel more aligned. And of course, this is the premise of sound healing, vocal sound healing, and especially vocal sound healing. This is the process that vocal sound healers need to go through for their own healing journey and to offer that healing for others. They need to go through that physiological process. They need to hold that mirror up and see where there's resistance. They need to work through all these layers, and it takes a lifetime. That work never stops. That work is continuous. We are always working to keep clear, to keep aligned, there's so many things pulling us in this day and age, keeping us stronger, more stamina, more alignment, so that when we are working with people with our voice, people know, they only have to hear you. You only have to pick up the phone and speak to them. Something shifts for them because you're living it. So, our authentic voice has to stem from an understanding of how it works from a physiological perspective. To know and understand how the mechanism works, so you can understand how to resonate your sound effectively for everything that you do. Not just, I'm going to do a bit of sound healing, I'll make sure and the rest of my life it doesn't matter. All the time. You can't work with it for an hour a week and expect it to change. It's a process that embodies everything, your whole life. And when you do, you can embrace that feeling of carefree vocalizing, feeling completely centered in yourself, in your sense of expression, clear-minded, clear thought. You can sound for hours without getting tired and losing your voice because you're using the mechanism as it was designed to be used. And a healthy and authentic voice, a healthy sound, is about the mechanism. It's about the emotions underlying the mechanism, and it's about the psychological processes running their programs behind it all. And they all need to be addressed. And the key to all of them is that voice work and that practice. And the key into your healing, comfort in who you are, your sound, is your voice and the acoustic space you hold for it. And you are the acoustic space. There's a lot going on, mouth, pharynx, chest, all of that. But your body is that space. It's not about making random sounds and doing random exercises with a constricted vocal setup, with stuff shut down and thinking that it's doing you good. You've got to know how the voice works first. And if you're working with a vocal coach or a holistic vocal coach, challenge them to tell you why you're doing an exercise that they've asked you to do. Why? And it's not just enough to warm up my voice, because I've seen a lot of people warming up their voice and working in really negative habits that aren't going to be warming up the voice, they're going to be shutting it down. So for your own safety and for your own healing, understand why you're doing something. It should never hurt. It should never feel worse afterwards. Very occasionally, if you've been working on something that's tricky, you might feel a little bit like you've worked, but it should never feel, you should never feel pain, or it shouldn't be cracking all over the place. Really, really use your discretion when it comes to these things. Take advice. The voice doesn't respond to pain. Simple sound, good understanding of the mechanism, and you can't go wrong. So, I think I've said all I want to say about that. And I hope that was helpful in some ways. As I said, it's been a real collection of things over the last couple of weeks, having run this workshop, having had quite a few inquiries as well about sort of authentic voice and so on, and working, with people as well, one-to-one, and sort of meeting people at various stages of the journey. I know some people work with some people who've been doing this for years, and it's a very different place to be when, there's other people that have literally just stepped into this world and the understanding of this. So wherever you're at, just keeping an open mind and finding your way with it. So thank you so much for joining me. You can explore your voice with me online Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. It's a Voice for Wellbeing and Meditation, 8:15 on a Monday morning, and Friday at 6. They're 45-minute sessions. And I also do a very light-hearted and friendly vocal conditioning and technique session, 45 minutes at 12 o'clock on a Wednesday. You can drop into those sessions, or you can have 3 sessions a week for a monthly payment, and you get replays in that monthly membership as well. So if you want somewhere to start in the privacy of your own home and you want to work with me, then that is one way of doing it. So I'll just leave that with you. But otherwise, have a little read around and see what you find. So thank you so much for being with me. It's always a pleasure. Please like and subscribe to the channel on YouTube or Spotify. Share with anyone that you know that might be interested. And I look forward to seeing you next time, and wish you really well. Take good care, folks. Happy sounding. Bye for now.